This program is supported by Bank of Commerce, an affiliate of San Miguel Corporation. We think customers.
Hello, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching Eagle News International. Good evening to you, CJ.
Good evening, Alma, and good evening to everyone joining the broadcast tonight. Here are the headlines.
Turkish Coast Guards evacuate hundreds of villagers from a burning power plant, and Greek firefighters battle a major blaze near the ancient Olympic site as a record heat wave wreaks havoc across Europe's southeast.
The total number of recorded COVID-19 cases worldwide has hit 200 million, according to the Johns Hopkins University Coronavirus Resource Center.
At least 10 million Filipinos have already been fully vaccinated, while close to 22 million have already received COVID doses.
And Philippine bet Carlo Paalam is one victory away from winning a first Olympic gold medal for the Philippines in boxing after his masterclass today in Tokyo.
First to Turkey, where rescuers began evacuating hundreds of villagers by sea after a deadly wildfire engulfed the outer edges of a thermal power plant, storing thousands of tons of coal. The regional authority said all explosive chemicals and other hazardous material had been removed from the strategic site. More than 180 wildfires have scorched huge swathes of forest and killed 8 people since breaking out along almost the entire perimeter of Turkey's Aegean and Mediterranean coasts. The European Union Satellite Monitoring Service said their radiative power, a measure of the fire's intensity, has reached unprecedented values in the entire data set, which goes back to 2003. Turkey's Agriculture and Forestry Minister Bekir Pagdemirli said temperatures in the Aegean city of Marmaris had reached an all-time record of 45.5 degrees Celsius or 114 degrees Fahrenheit this week. The fire's strength and scale have exposed Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan to days of criticism for what some observers say has been his sluggish response to this crisis. Erdogan had just begun a live television interview about the fires as news broke about the evacuation of the plant, and he acknowledged that the efforts of firefighters to save the station were failing in the face of tremendous wind fanning the flames. But he also lashed out at opposition leaders for trying to score political points by questioning his government's readiness and response.
In other news, Greek firefighters battled to bring under control 2 major fires raging near Olympia and on the island of Evia as the country swelters in a record-breaking heat wave. Olympia usually thronging with tourists at this time of the year, as well as 6 nearby villages were evacuated the day before. A similar number of firefighters were also battling to contain a blaze on Evia, some 200 kilometers or 120 miles east of Athens. At least 150 houses were destroyed on the island as the fire surrounded a monastery and a dozen villages. 2 more villages were evacuated early today, according to ANA. The mayor of the town of Mantudi, Giannis Chaporniotis, said the fire was moving on 4 fronts, with one particularly difficult to control near the St. David Monastery, which was evacuated on Wednesday. The fire brigade said today that it had had to deal with 92 forest fires over the past 24 hours on top of the 118 from the previous day. Experts have warned that global warming is increasing both the frequency and intensity of such fires.
And the total number of recorded COVID cases worldwide has now hit 200 million, according to the Johns Hopkins University Coronavirus Resource Center and also an AFP tally. Now, the actual number is believed to be even higher since a large number of the less severe or asymptomatic cases remain undetected despite intensified testing in many countries. The number of infections is currently rising sharply, driven primarily by the spread of the highly contagious Delta variant, but the number of deaths is increasing at a slower rate according to the data. Now, the global average daily number of new infections over the past 7 days stands at more than 600,000, an increase of 68% over the 7-day average in mid-June. At the same time, the average number of daily deaths stands at 9,350, an increase of 20% compared with the beginning of July. The U.S. health authorities estimate that people who are vaccinated are 25 times less likely to be hospitalized or die from COVID-19 than those who are not. The novel coronavirus has killed more than 4.25 million people worldwide since the start of the pandemic, but the World Health Organization estimates that the overall toll could be 2 to 3 times higher than official records due to the excess mortality that is directly and indirectly linked to COVID-19.
Meanwhile, the World Health Organization called for a moratorium on COVID-19 vaccine booster shots until at least the end of September to address the drastic inequity in dose distribution between rich and poor nations. World Health Organization Chief Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus urged the countries and companies controlling the supply of doses to change course immediately and prioritize less wealthy states. The World Health Organization again urged the COVID-19 vaccine manufacturers to keep their prices low and affordable after reports that two producers will raise the cost that they are charging the EU. The Pfizer vaccine will jump from 15.5 euros to 19.5 euros or 18.35 to $23, and Moderna from 19 euros to 21.5 euros. British newspaper The Financial Times revealed Sunday, citing the contract concluded with the European Union.
We need an urgent reversal from the majority of vaccines going to high-income countries to the majority going to We need an urgent reversal from the majority of vaccines going to high-income countries to the majority going to low-income countries. Accordingly, WHO is calling for a moratorium on boosters until at least the end of September to enable at least 10% of the population of every country to be vaccinated. We cannot and we should not accept countries that have already used most of the global supply of vaccines, using even more of it, while the world's most vulnerable people remain unprotected.
Is that it is essential in this time that we look at trying to get vaccines to the people who need them at the best possible prices to get out of this pandemic, and any changes to those prices would really need to be justified in terms of cost being borne to produce them at this point, because really the goal right now is to get as many people vaccinated as rapidly as possible so we can save lives, reduce the number of people who are getting sick, take pressure off the healthcare systems, and get back to a much more normal functioning of society and obviously of our economies as well.
Now, Maria Angela Simao, the World Health Organization Assistant Director General for Access to Medicines, Vaccines, and Pharmaceuticals, said, "We have a market where the demand is very high in comparison with production."
Meanwhile, the United States rejected an appeal from the UN Health Agency for a moratorium on COVID-19 vaccine booster shots and for rich countries to focus instead on supplying poorer nations. Take a look.
We believe we can do both. We also, in this country, have enough supply to ensure that every American has access to a vaccine. We will have enough supply to ensure if the FDA decides that boosters are recommended for a portion of the population, to provide those as well. We believe we can do both, and we don't need to make that choice. This is not in alignment with the guidance of the public health officials, whether that is the CDC or the FDA. And we are certainly in touch with local officials on that matter and conveying exactly that. We also, at the same time, are prepared if the FDA decides that they are going to recommend a booster. That is why we ordered the number of doses we did order several months ago, because we are like Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts and always want to be prepared. So we are prepared for that, but it is not what the FDA and the CDC are recommending, and we are conveying that directly to officials.
The World Health Organization has been for months sounding the alarm over a glaring and growing imbalance in vaccine availability against a disease that has killed 4.2 million people worldwide. Some 4.3 billion doses of COVID vaccines have been administered globally in countries categorized as high income by the World Bank. 101 doses per 100 people have been injected, and that figure drops to 1.7 doses per 100 people in the 29 lowest income countries.
In other news, at least 10 million Filipinos have already been vaccinated or fully vaccinated, while close to 22 million have already received COVID-19 doses. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said that it is important, or it is an important milestone, and this is because of the cooperation of the private sector and the local government units with the national government. Take a look.
Mahigit 10 milyon ang fully vaccinated na po. Nasa 109 million po ang official population ng Pilipinas ayon sa 2020 census. Nasa 50 to 70 million naman po ang ating target para sa population protection. Kumpiyansa tayo na maabot natin ito. Bago ang aking press briefing ay nagkaroon po tayo ng isang event sa SM Mega Mall to mark the important milestone of 10 million fully vaccinated Filipinos. Tignan po natin ang ilan sa mga larawan. Pinapaalala lamang namin na huwag sayangin ang pagkakataon magpabakuna, magpalista sa inyong LGU. At sa mga LGU po, gawing maayos at efficient ang pagbabakuna. Huwag pahirapan ng taong bayan. Iwasan natin ang pagdagsa ng mga tao. Sabihin ang kinakailangang impormasyon tulad ng schedule at ang available slides. Sundin po natin ang curfew hours, siguraduhin may crowd control. Naku po, kanina po, nakakita tayo ng mga larawan sa Marikina at sa sa Manila, correction, at Las Piñas. Hindi Marikina, SM Maasin, nakita ko rin yung larawan doon, no? At saka sa Las Piñas, naku, sa Las Piñas mo, mukhang zombie yung dami ng tao. Ewan ko lang po kung totoo yung nakapost, no? At saka sa Manila rin po, no? Naku po, ang pinagbilin po ng Presidente, dapat unang-una kinokontrol po talaga ang crowd.
Secretary Roque said LGU officials should be able to control crowding because there are enough resources to implement minimum public health standards. He also said neglecting quarantine protocols in COVID-19 vaccination sites could spell disaster for the country.
And rumors and fake news on social media caused the influx of people at different vaccination sites in the capital city, Manila, on Thursday. Manila Public Information Office head Julius Leonen said the thousands who flocked to the 4 malls that offered 2,500 first doses each of the COVID-19 vaccines said they came in droves because of a report that unvaccinated individuals will be arrested once the 15-day enhanced community quarantine, or ECQ, starts on Friday. SM San Lazaro had to cancel the rollout to ensure safety, while vaccination continued at the other 3 venues. Leonen said their fears were confirmed by members of the Manila Police District who assisted in the 4 inoculation sites. He said the investigators found out that people flocked because of the news that they will no longer be allowed to go out of their houses if they're not vaccinated, that they will be apprehended. Moreover, it's the last day before ECQ. He also reiterated that it was fake news and cited Manila Mayor Francisco Moreno Domagoso's previous statement that all those going to vaccination sites will be allowed to go out during the ECQ from August 6 to the 20th.
Staying here in the Philippines, the National Task Force Against COVID-19 Chief Implementer and Vaccine Czar Secretary Carlito Galvez Jr. yesterday said the imposition of the enhanced community quarantine in the National Capital Region starting tomorrow is needed to ensure the country will not suffer the same fate as India and neighboring Indonesia, which saw a significant spike in COVID-19 cases, mainly due to the Delta variant. Infectious diseases expert Dr. Edsel Salvana warned that the Delta variant is 60% more transmissible than the UK variant or Alpha variant and 3 times more contagious than the original SARS-CoV-2 virus. Take a look.
Actually, kailangan natin talaga, ma'am, yung ECQ. Though it is a very painful decision, nakikita natin talaga pagka once na at the verge na magkakaroon ng collapse yung ating health utilization rate, talagang kailangan natin. Nakita natin sa Indonesia, lately gumamit pa sila ng mga 300 tanks to really implement yung ECQ nila, yung kanilang quarantine control. And then nakita natin ang kasing basic natin sa quality control. Bakit tayo nag-ECQ is because one, nakita natin sa presentation kanina ni Yusek Flores na yung compliance natin talaga nakita natin karamihan sa mga tao natin na hindi nagmamask. At the same time, yung vulnerability na sinasabi nga ni Dr. Salvania na fleeting moments yung Delta eh. Ang Delta kasi, kung wala sana Delta, madam, kaya natin sana. Pero yung Delta kasi nakita natin, what we're seeing in Cebu, and what we're seeing now in Cagayan de Oro, and what we're seeing in Hongoog, nakita natin talaga na ibang klase ito. So, ang nakita natin dito is, if we will not declare ECQ sa NCR, we will be next India. Indonesia, ma-experience po natin yan.
And then Delta, which is the subject of this hearing, this is 60% more transmissible than Alpha, or the UK variant, which makes it 2.5 to 3 times more contagious than the original SARS-CoV-2 virus. It seems to be deadlier, although this is still up for debate. Pero pag na-overwhelm kasi yung healthcare system mo, marami talagang mamamatay, as we saw in India, where you don't even have enough oxygen for people. Patients do tend to have more severe disease, and even younger ages, especially the unvaccinated ones, really do develop severe disease in a higher proportion. So this has been shown a lot by other people, but the bottom line here is that while the original virus from Wuhan could infect about 2.4 to 2.6 people, ang Delta po up to 8 people kaya niyang i-infect, and those 8 can infect 8 each. So the recent findings, and this is from an outbreak in China, which actually has controlled their pandemic, 1,000 times more virus particles than the original virus. And this is also something that came out from the Centers for Disease Control na nakita nila na in the past kasi, we know that people who are vaccinated who end up with breakthrough infection are a lot less contagious than people who have been who are not vaccinated. Pero because there are so many virus particles in Delta, even people who are vaccinated can transmit to a lot of people, although the person who is already vaccinated is more or less protected from severe disease.
Illegal acts in relation to the coronavirus disease vaccination program will have corresponding jail time and fines in Quezon City. Now, recently, the local government have been intercepting vaccinees who present fake notification texts and email messages. Upon verification, they were not included in the lineup for the day. Under Ordinance number SP 3032, approved on July 29, violators shall be fined 5,000 pesos and or imprisoned for not less than 1 month, but not more than 6 months, or both at the discretion of the court. Also covered by the ordinance are misrepresenting any information requested by authorities in relation to vaccination, including the information indicated in the vaccine card for purposes of obtaining undue benefits or privileges, sale, advertisement, distribution, solicitation, or administration of COVID vaccines for profit and commercial purposes without any authorization or permit issued by the FDA, and purchasing COVID-19 vaccines, whether from a private individual or a government official employee without any authority issued by the FDA. Also punishable in the city are sale of COVID vaccine slots originally reserved by the person applying for the same to others for the purpose of substituting someone other than the original and supposed applicant. Purchasing COVID vaccine slots, whether from a private individual or a government official or employee.
Meanwhile, the Metropolitan Manila Development Authority, or MMDA, has asked the National Bureau of Investigation to look into the spread of rumors that only those vaccinated against COVID-19 will receive financial aid or ayuda during the enhanced community quarantine in Metro Manila. Now, in a letter addressed to NBI Officer in Charge Eric Destor today, MMDA Chair Benjamin Benhur Abalos Jr. has asked the NBI to find the sources of misinformation and hold them accountable. Abalos asked the NBI to file the necessary charges against them. In a separate statement, he said these rumors are fake and baseless, and clarified that the government would give 1,000 to 4,000 pesos to low-income residents regardless if they are vaccinated or not.
And the news continues here on Eagle News. CJ and I will be back right after this break.
This portion is brought to you by North Luzon Express Terminal.
Hindi makukompleto ang kada umaga ng walang mainit at masarap na kape. Subalit ngayong may ECQ, karamihan sa mga nasa establishmento na ating iniinuman ng masarap na kape ay sarado rin. MSMEs again are affected by the lockdowns. Small businesses should continue learning new strategies, including keeping up with the digitalization to survive the pandemic. In this episode, we will be given tips on how to remain persistent amidst the trials and challenges we, including our businesses, face. With our guest, Mr. Eric Lim, the COO of Conlin's Coffee.
You have to find the right partners. Part of finding your partners is the same thing what your customers are looking for: consistency, reliability, and quality.
All this episode of Open for Business.
Welcome back. The UK government announced it will offer coronavirus vaccinations to all 16 and 17-year-olds. We have more from Patricia Rodriguez. Patricia.
The UK government announced Wednesday that it will offer coronavirus vaccinations to all 16 and 17-year-olds, but not to younger healthy teenagers as in many other Western countries. The move follows updated guidance from British health regulators that the country's vaccine drive should be extended to those aged 16 and 17 without underlying health issues after review of the latest data. However, the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunization, JCVI, made no change to its current advice to the government that only 12 to 15-year-olds deemed vulnerable should be jabbed. This contrasts with the United States, which announced in May that younger teens would be vaccinated. The older teenagers eligible will receive the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine, which has been approved for use in Britain for people aged 12 and over. Regulators have not yet decided when these teens should get their second doses, with a further recommendation likely in the coming weeks. Let's listen to the statement of England's Deputy Chief Medical Officer, Jonathan Van Tam, made at a televised briefing.
So there is no time to waste in getting on with this. Now we have the JCVI advice on starting that initial first dose in 16 to 17-year-olds. Then I want us to proceed as fast as is practically possible. It isn't going to be tomorrow. I don't think it's likely to be early next week, but I can tell you that the NHS has been kept informed of what has been being deliberated by JCVI. It has been preparing for multiple permutations and options for very many weeks now, and I would expect that this programme will start in a very short number of weeks, as opposed to any longer than that.
Britain's fast-paced vaccination program has seen nearly 89% of adults given at least one dose, while close to two-thirds are now fully jabbed. Since easing all virus curbs in England on July 19, the number of new daily cases has declined, prompting hopes that the vaccines are succeeding in defeating the pandemic in Britain. Reporting from London, United Kingdom, I'm Patricia Rodriguez. We live in interesting times.
Thank you so much, Patricia. Now, in other news, images from inside Florida's Memorial Regional Hospital and Memorial Pembroke show medical staff assisting COVID patients as the state sees record numbers of cases and hospitalizations. Take a look.
I can tell you what we are seeing in the hospital, and that the numbers of patients are unprecedented, and that's in black and white. We have more patients in our hospital now than ever before, and if you look at the slope of the curve, and we're happy to provide you with our census curves, you can see that the line is going straight upward. The challenge is the numbers of people getting sick at the same time. If the numbers getting sick were spread out over a much broader period of time, the system could accommodate that. The hospitals could take care of that. It's the sheer number coming in at the same time. There's only so many beds, only so many doctors, only so many nurses.
On Friday, Florida reported 21,683 new infections, the most COVID-19 cases in the state in a single day since the start of the pandemic, according to data released from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. On Wednesday, Florida had 12,408 people hospitalized from COVID-19 complications, a new record high for the state, according to data from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. In July, Florida was one of 4 states that accounted for 40% of the country's total infections, White House COVID-19 coordinator Jeff Zients said over the weekend. Now, during that time, Florida recorded 1 out of every 5 of the nation's new cases.
Now, the United States, which closed its borders to much of the world as the pandemic took hold, plans to now eventually begin allowing fully vaccinated foreigners back in, that according to the White House. President Joe Biden's administration, recognizing the importance of international travel, wants to reopen to visitors from abroad in a safe and sustainable manner. It is developing a phased approach that over time will mean, with limited exceptions, that foreign nationals traveling to the U.S. from all countries need to be fully vaccinated, according to the official, without specifying a time frame. The United States has restricted travel from the European Union, Britain, China, and Iran for more than a year due to the pandemic, later adding other countries, including Brazil and India. The European Union in June opened up to travelers from the United States, typically requiring proof of vaccination or negative tests under pressure from tourism-dependent nations such as Greece, Spain, and Italy that feared another troubled year.
Almost 2/3 of Australia's 25 million people were in lockdown today as the country's faltering bid to bring a virulent Delta outbreak to heel prompted a new wave of restrictions. Health officials said almost all the new cases were in Sydney, but a handful of infections in other districts prompted State Premier Gladys Berejiklian to widen stay-at-home restrictions to neighboring areas. Take a look.
Okay, sure. See you in a bit. Bye.
We will get back to that news later on.
All right, we'll go with that news in a little bit as soon as we get a better connection. Okay, Tokyo reported a large jump in virus cases, again shattering records as the government expanded restrictions to 8 more regions just days before the Olympic ends. Tokyo is already under a virus state of emergency but is seeing an exponential growth in cases driven by the more contagious Delta variant. On Thursday, the city reported 5,042 cases, up from 3,865 a week earlier and 1,979 the week before that. Now, daily case numbers have also broken records nationwide, topping 14,000 for the first time on Wednesday. Infections are spreading with a speed we have never experienced before, according to Prime Minister Suga Yoshihide at a virus task force meeting today. He also warned that with a rapid increase of cases, the number of patients in serious condition, which had been contained, is growing. 6 parts of the country are under a virus emergency, which bans restaurants and bars from selling alcohol and asks them to close by 8 p.m. Other parts of Japan are under so-called quasi-emergency measures, with the government expanding those restrictions to another 8 areas on Thursday.
In other news, the Taliban warned of more attacks targeting Afghan government leaders a day after the defense minister escaped an assassination attempt and as the insurgents fought to take control of a string of besieged cities across the country. A bomb and gun attack on Defense Minister Bismillah Mohammadi on Tuesday night brought the war to the capital for the first time in months. But fighting has raged in the countryside since May, when foreign forces began the last stage of a withdrawal due to end later this month. The Afghan and U.S. militaries have stepped up airstrikes against the insurgents, and the Taliban said Wednesday the Kabul raid was their response. A first bomb exploded in the center of Kabul, sending a thick plume of smoke into the sky, according to an AFP correspondent. Less than 2 hours later, there was another loud blast, followed by smaller explosions and rapid gunfire, all near the high-security green zone that houses several embassies, including the U.S. mission. Now, the minister was safe and Afghan forces repelled the attackers, but Interior Ministry spokesman Mirwais Stanizkai said 8 people were killed and many more wounded. Human Rights Watch, meanwhile, accused the Taliban of summarily executing captured soldiers, police, and civilians accused of having ties to the government in areas they had seized. As the Taliban make battlefield gains, months of on and off talks between the insurgents and the Afghan government in the Qatari capital of Doha have achieved little and appear to have lost momentum. The National Security Advisor of neighboring Pakistan, which has strained ties with the Kabul government and has allegedly provided material and advisory support to the Taliban, called on both sides to compromise and reach a peace settlement.
In a related news, Russia today kicked off military drills near the border with Afghanistan as Kabul struggles to peg back a Taliban offensive after the withdrawal of U.S.-led troops. The joint exercises at the Karb Madan training ground, just 20 kilometers from the Tajik border with Afghanistan, involved 2,500 troops from Russia, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan, according to Russia's Central Military District in a statement. The drills that will continue until August 10 are being held in parallel to joint Russian-Uzbek maneuvers featuring 1,500 troops in Uzbekistan's Termez near the border with Afghanistan. Moscow has positioned itself as bulwark against potential spillover from Afghanistan into Central Asia, where 3 former Soviet republics share borders with the conflict-racked country. Russia maintains military bases in both Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan, Central Asia's 2 poorest countries.
Eagle News will be back with more stories. Please don't go away.
Bank of Commerce. What we are is personal banking. where we understand that every deposit is your hard-earned money. Every loan is for good reason. Every service aids in your convenience. Every business of ours is meant to grow yours. We hear you, feel you, and we act on your every banking need. Bank of Commerce, an affiliate of San Miguel Corporation.
Ulo. Sa ilalim ng dagat ay sisisig. Ang tahong ay hahangin. At ang kita ay palalaguin.
Para ka kumita, sisipagan mo, tapos konting kapitalo, magpopondo ka para meron kang hanguin, no? Meron kang makuha pagdating ng oras. Mga 6 months, 3 months, pabalik na yung puhunan mo.
Kesa sa itapon, no, kailangan natin siyang i-recycle para mapakinabangan.
Iba't ibang sangkap ay lutuin. Putahing di kayang limutin. Ako po, si Robin Padilla, at ito po ang Mulvlog. Kaagapay sa hanap buhay. Kaagapay sa hanap buhay.
Welcome back. Almost 2/3 of Australia's 25 million people were in lockdown today as the country's faltering bid to bring a virulent Delta outbreak to heal prompted a new wave of restrictions. Health officials said almost all the new cases were in Sydney, but a handful of infections in other districts prompted State Premier Gladys Berejiklian to widen stay-at-home restrictions to neighboring areas. Take a look.
And we are seeing young people in ICU. We're seeing people in their teens, in their 20s and their 30s, as well as older individuals.
Stress that the vaccine rollout is absolutely critical to how any society lives with the Delta strain. It's been demonstrated time and time again how contagious this is, and you can't compare this strain to other strains that we've dealt with. You can't compare this strain to what's happened previously. It is a new phenomenon. It is a game changer. But one tool we have now, we didn't have before, is the vaccine. Because the vaccine is around, it allows us to fight this strain. It allows us to fight reducing our number of cases.
Now, the country's two largest cities received a double blow in their effort to retain COVID-0 status, with authorities reporting a record number of new coronavirus infections in Sydney and imposing a 6th lockdown for virus-wary Melbourne. In total, about 60% of the population in cities from Brisbane to Ballarat are now being told to stay at home. After 6 weeks of lockdown in Sydney, the number of new infections in New South Wales State grew to 262 today, the largest daily tally since the pandemic began.
Now, new President Ibrahim Raisi takes oath before the parliament Thursday, with Iran facing an economy battered by U.S. sanctions, a grinding health crisis, and thorny negotiations on its nuclear program. Now, the ultra-conservative former judiciary chief officially began his 4-year mandate on Tuesday when he was inaugurated by Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Raisi takes over from moderate Hassan Rouhani, whose landmark achievement during his 2-term presidency was the 2015 nuclear agreement between the Islamic Republic and 6 world powers. Iran has been grappling with a deep economic and social crisis following former President Donald Trump's decision to unilaterally withdraw the United States from the nuclear deal in 2018 and impose crushing sanctions.
Indonesia's economy bounced back in the second quarter to post its first growth in more than a year. But analysts are warning the recovery might be short-lived as COVID-19 surges. Southeast Asia's largest economy grew by 7.07% in the April to June quarter compared with the same period last year, according to Central Statistics Agency today. The figure is higher than a projection by the Central Bank of Indonesia, which predicted growth of 6.75%. The expansion, the first positive figure in 5 quarters, was driven by a pickup in exports and imports as Indonesia's trading partners also saw greater activity. BPS head Margo Yuwano said for the economy to keep growing, the key is how we manage the health sector, comply with health protocols, and vaccinate people to reach herd immunity. But analysts believe Indonesia will struggle to record continued growth as the virus surge triggered by the Delta variant is now wrecking the country.
Staying in Indonesia, where the country's coronavirus death toll topped 100,000 on Wednesday, as the country struggles to control the spread of the Delta variant. Now, the impact of the pandemic can be seen at the Rorotan Public Cemetery, one of the biggest COVID burial sites in the nation. Take a look.
And Carlo Paalam is now one victory away from winning a first Olympic gold medal for the Philippines in boxing after his masterclass on Thursday in Tokyo. But there is to be no double Philippine gold after compatriot Yumir Marshall was edged out on split points in his middleweight semifinal. The Philippines has a proud boxing history and boasts one of the all-time greats in Manny Pacquiao. But the country has never won Olympic boxing gold. Paalam could be the man to change that. In the flyweight category at the Kokugikan Arena, which is usually home to Japan's national sport, sumo, Paalam outboxed home fighter Rayome Tanaka in a unanimous points win in their semifinal. The 23-year-old Paalam was ahead on the judges' scorecards after the first 2 rounds. They are displayed on screens to make the scoring more transparent, and had Japan's Tanaka chasing shadows and missing wildly with his shots at times. Paalam, who sank to his knees and screamed when the victory was announced, faces Britain's Galal Yafai in the final on Saturday for gold.
In a related news, Yumir Felix Marshall lost to Ukraine's Alexander Kizniak via split decision 2-3 today to settle for a bronze medal in men's middleweight class of boxing at the Tokyo Olympics. Now, Marshall fought the illustrious Ukrainian punch-for-punch to get the nod of the 5 judges in the first 2 rounds. But Kizniak couldn't be denied and rallied in the 4th round to escape with a close victory. Marshall's bronze is the Philippines' second medal in boxing after Nesty Petesha's silver in women's featherweight and the third overall for the Philippines after Heidelin Diaz's historic gold medal in women's weightlifting.
And flying Australian teen Keegan Palmer said he was beyond stoked after unleashing a top-secret trick to claim the inaugural men's spark skateboarding Olympic gold medal today. Now, Palmer, 18, threw down the gauntlet with 94.04 points in his first run of the final before incredibly bettering his score to 95.83 in his third and last run. Now, that stunning mark came thanks to a kickflip 540 he had been saving for the occasion after putting blood, sweat, and tears into practicing it. The spectacular trick comfortably gave Palmer the gold ahead of Brazilian silver medalist Pedro Barros and America's Corey Juneau, who claimed bronze with 84.13.
In other Tokyo Olympics news, Matthew Walls won Britain's first track cycling gold medal of the Tokyo Olympics as he stormed to victory in the men's omnium today. Walls was a clear winner at the Izu Velodrome, finishing 24 points ahead of New Zealand's Campbell Stewart and a further 5 clear of Italy's Elia Viviani. The 23-year-old signaled his potential by winning omnium bronze at the World Championships last year, but this is his first appearance at an Olympics, and he rose to the occasion. After settling for silver medals in the men's team sprint and women's team pursuit earlier this week, Britain now have a gold to make it 8 cycling medals in total in Japan.
And Chinese teenager Kuan Hongchan produced 3 perfect 10 dives in a dazzling display to win the Olympic women's 10-meter platform gold medal today. Now, Kuan, at 14 years old, the youngest Chinese athlete in Tokyo, beat teammate Chen Yu Shi into second with a remarkable overall score of 466.20 points. The 15-year-old Chen, the reigning world champion who had already won gold in the 10-meter synchronized event, finished 39.80 points adrift. Australia's Melissa Wu was a distant third with 371.40 points. Kuan was awarded perfect 10 scores from all 7 judges for her second and fourth dives.
Now, in other news, this time we are going to be featuring the NBA stars who are still in the running for the gold medal for the Tokyo Olympics. Kevin Durant scored 23 points, and Devin Booker added 20 to power 3-time defending champions United States past Australia 97-78 Thursday and into an Olympic men's basketball final against either France or Slovenia. The Americans were 24-18 behind after the first quarter and 45-42 adrift at halfway, but stormed back during a dominant third term to stay on track for a 4th consecutive gold medal. It was revenge for Greg Popovich's men who had crashed to Patty Mills' Boomers in their past 2 meetings, including a demoralizing 91-83 defeat in Las Vegas last month. They also lost a 98-94 in the lead up to the 2019 World Cup in Melbourne. But when it comes to the Olympics, the U.S. are dominant and stretched their lead over their longtime foes at the Games to 9-0, crushing Australia's title dreams.
And finally, in our news, we give you a view of the sun setting over the Asakusa district of Tokyo 3 days before the end of the 2020 Olympics. Take a look. Beautiful view.
Beautiful views, but we still have a better sunset here in the Philippines.
True.
And that's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm CJ Hero. The news continues tomorrow.
And at the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. We'll see you back tomorrow. I'm Alma Angeles, and We live in interesting times.
This program is supported by Bank of Commerce, an affiliate of San Miguel Corporation. We think customers.